Today we will be picking up where we left off a couple of weeks ago. Had some, had a new computer come in, had some other stuff run into the way. So we will be picking up where we left off with chapter 15 and 16 of Bram Stoker's Dracula. I saw something go up that didn't look right. Great. Calendar put it up wrong. Okay. Well, no big deal. I'll have to fix that afterwards. All right. So, when last we left our book, Dr. Seward was informed by Dr. Van Helsing that Lucy was not just a victim of a vampire bat or a vampire, but was one herself. So we pick up with Dr. Seward's diary. Chapter 15, Bram Stoker's Dracula. Dr. Seward's diary continued. For a while, sheer anger mastered me. It was as if he had, during her life, struck Lucy on the face. I smote the table hard and rose up as I said to him, "Dr. Van Helsing, are you mad?" He raised his head and looked at me, and somehow the tenderness of his face calmed me at once. "Would that I were," he said. "Madness were easy to bear compared with the truth like this. Oh, my friend, why, think you, did I go so far round? Why take you so long to tell you so simple a thing? Was it because I hate you and have hated you all my life? Was it because I wished to give you pain? Was it that I wanted, now so late, revenge for that time when you saved my life and from a fearful death? No. Forgive me, said I. He went on. My friend, it was because I wished you to be gentle in the breaking to you, for I know you have loved that so sweet lady. But even yet I do not expect you to believe. It is so hard to accept at once any abstract truth, that we may doubt such to be possible when we have always believed the no of it. It is more hard still to accept so sad a concrete truth, and of such a one as Miss Lucy. Tonight, I go to prove it. Dare you come with me? This staggered me. A man does not like to prove such a truth. Byron accepted from the category jealousy, and proved the very truth he most abhorred. He saw my hesitation and spoke. The logic is simple. No man's logic this time. Jumping from tussock to tussock in a misty bog. If it be not true, then proof will be relief. At worst, it will not harm. If it be true, there is the dread. Yet very dread should help my cause, for in it is some need of belief. Come, I tell you what I propose. First, that we go off now and see that the child is in the hospital. Dr. Vincent of the North Hospital, where the papers say the child is a friend of mine. And I think of yours since you were in class at Amsterdam. He will let 2 scientists see his case. If not, he will let 2 friends. We shall tell him nothing, and only that we wish to learn. And then, he took a key from his pocket and held it up. And then we spend the night, you and I, in the churchyard where Lucy lies. This is the key that locked the tomb. I had it from the coffin man to give to Arthur. My heart sank within me, for I felt that there was some fearful ordeal before us. I could do nothing, however, so I plucked up what heart I could and said that we had better hasten, as the afternoon was passing. We found the child awake. It had had a sleep and taken some food, and altogether was going on well. Dr. Vincent took the bandage from its throat and showed us the punctures. There was no mistaking the similarity to those which had been on Lucy's throat. They were smaller, and the edges looked fresher, that was all. We asked Vincent to what he attributed them, and he replied that it must have been a bite of some animal, perhaps a rat. But, for his own part, he was inclined to think that it was one of the bats which are so numerous on the northern heights of London. "Out of so many harmless ones," he said. "There may be some wild specimen from the south, of a more malignant species. Some sailor may have brought one home, and had managed to escape, or even the zoological gardens. A young one may have got loose, or one be bred there from a vampire. These things do occur, you know. Only 10 weeks ago a wolf got out and was, I believe, traced up in this direction. For a week after, the children were playing nothing but Red Riding Hood on the heath, and in every alley in the place until this Bloofer lady scare came along, since when it has been quite a gala time with them. Even this poor little mite, when he woke up today, asked the nurse if he might go away. When she asked him why he wanted to go, he said he wanted to play with the Bloofer lady." "I hope," said Van Helsing, "that when you are sending the child home, you will caution the parents to keep strict watch over it. These fancies to stray are most dangerous, and if the child were to remain out another night, it would probably be fatal. But in any case, I suppose you will not let it away for some days." "Oh, certainly not. Not for a week at least. Longer if the wound is not healed." Our visit to the hospital took more time than we had reckoned on, and the sun had dipped before we came out. When Van Helsing saw how dark it was, he said, "There is no hurry. It is more late than I thought. Come, let us seek somewhere that we may eat, and then we shall go on our way." We dined at Jack Straw's castle, along with a little crowd of bicyclists and others who were generally noisy. About 10 o'clock we started from the inn. It was then very dark, and the scattered lamps made the darkness greater, and we were once outside their individual radius. The professor had evidently noted the road we were to go, for he went on unhesitatingly, but as for me, I was in quite a mix-up as to locality. As we went further, we met fewer and fewer people, till at last we were somewhat surprised when we met even the patrol of horse police going their usual suburban round. At last, we reached the wall of the churchyard, which we climbed over. With some little difficulty, for it was very dark, and the whole place seemed so strange to us, we found the Westerner tomb. The professor took the key, opened the creaky door, and standing back politely, but quite unconsciously, motioned me to precede him. There was a delicious irony in the offer, in the courtliness of giving preference on such a ghastly occasion. My companion followed me quickly and cautiously drew the door to, after carefully ascertaining the lock was a falling and not a spring one. In the latter case, we should have been in a bad plight. Then he fumbled in his bag and, taking out a matchbox and a piece of candle, proceeded to make a light. The tomb in the daytime, when wreathed with small flowers, looked grim and gruesome enough. But now, some days afterwards, when the flowers hung lank and dead, their whites turning to rust and their greens to browns, when the spider and the beetle had resumed their accustomed dominance, when time, discolored stone, and dust-encrusted mortar, and rusty dank iron and tarnished brass, and clouded silver plating gave back the feeble glimmer of a candle, the effect was more miserable and sordid than could have been imagined. conveyed irresistibly the idea that life, animal life, was not the only thing which could pass away. Van Helsing went about his work systematically, holding his candle so that he could read the coffin plates, and so holding it that the sperm dropped in white patches, which congealed as they touched the metal. He made assurance of Lucy's coffin. Another search in his bag, and he took out a turn screw. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "To open the coffin. You shall yet be convinced." Straight away he began taking out the screws, and finally lifted off the lid, showing the casing of lead beneath. The sight was almost too much for me. It seemed to be as much an affront to the dead as it would have been to have stripped off her clothing in her sleep while living. I actually took hold of his hand to stop him. He only said, "You shall see," and again, fumbling in his bag, took out a tiny fret saw. Striking the turn screw through the lead with a swift downward stab, which made me wince, he made a small hole, which was, however, big enough to admit the point of the saw. I had expected a rush of gas from the weak old corpse. We doctors, who have had to study our dangers, have to become accustomed to such things, and I drew back towards the door. Professor never stopped for a moment. He sawed down a couple of feet along one side of the lead coffin, and then across and down the other side. Taking the edge of the loose flange, he bent it back towards the foot of the coffin, and holding up the candle into the aperture, motioned me to look. I drew near and looked. The coffin was empty. It was certainly a surprise to me, and gave me a considerable shock. Van Helsing was unmoved. He was now more sure than ever of his ground, and so emboldened to proceed in his task. "Are you satisfied now, friend John?" he asked. I felt all the dogged argumentativeness of my nature awake within me as I answered him. "I am satisfied that Lucy's body is not in that coffin, but that only proves one thing." "And what is that, friend John?" "That it is not there." "That is good logic," he said, "so far as it goes. But how can you account for it not being there?" "Perhaps a body snatcher," I suggested. "Some of the Undertaker's people may have stolen it." I felt that I was speaking folly, and yet it was the only real cause which I could suggest. The professor sighed. Well, he said, "we must have more proof. Come with me." He put on the coffin lid again, gathered up all his things, and placed them in the bag, blew out the light, and placed the candle also in the bag. We opened the door and went out. Behind us, he closed the door and locked it. He handed me the key, saying, "Will you keep it? You had better be assured." I laughed. It was not a very cheerful laugh, I'm bound to say, as I motioned him to keep it. "A key is nothing," I said. "There may be duplicates, and anyhow it is not difficult to pick a lock of that kind." He said nothing, but put the key in his pocket. Then he told me to watch at one side of the churchyard, whilst he would watch at the other. I took up my place behind a yew tree, and saw his dark figure move until the intervening headstones and trees hid it from my sight. It was a lonely vigil. Just after I had taken my place, I heard a distant clock strike 12, and in time came 1 and 2. I was chilled and unnerved and angry with the professor for taking me on such an errand, and with myself for coming. I was too cold and too sleepy to be keenly observant, and not sleepy enough to betray my trust. So altogether, I had a dreary, miserable time. Suddenly, as I turned around, I thought I saw something like a white streak moving between 2 dark yew trees at the side of the churchyard farthest from the tomb. At the same time, a dark mass moved from the professor's side of the ground, and Hurley went towards it. Then I too moved, but I had to go round headstones and railed off tombs. I stumbled over graves. The sky was overcast, and somewhere far off an early cock crew. A little way off, beyond a line of scattered juniper trees which marched the pathway to the church, a white, dim figure flitted in the direction of the tomb. The tomb itself was hidden by trees, and I could not see where the figures disappeared. I heard the rustle of actual movement where I had first seen the white figure, and coming over, on the professor holding in his arms a tiny child. When he saw me, he held it out to me and said, "Are you satisfied now?" "No," I said in a way that I felt was aggressive. "Do you not see the child?" "Yes, it is a child, but who brought it here? And is it wounded?" I asked. "We shall see," said the professor. And with one impulse, we took our way out of the churchyard, he carrying the sleepy child. When we had got some little distance away, we went into a clump of trees and struck a match and looked at the child's throat. It was without a scratch or scar of any kind. "Was I right?" I asked triumphantly. "We were just in time," said the professor thankfully. We now had to decide what we were to do with the child, and so consulted about it. If we were to take it to a police station, we should have to give some account of our movements during the night at least. We should have had to make some statement as to how we would come to find the child. So finally, we decided that we would take it to the heath, and when we heard a policeman coming, would leave it where he could not fail to find it. We would then seek our way home as quickly as we could. All fell out well. At the edge of Hampstead Heath, we heard a policeman's heavy tramp, and lying the child on the pathway, we waited and watched until he saw it as he flashed his lantern to and fro. We heard his exclamation of astonishment, and then we went away silently. By good chance, we got a cab near the Spaniards and drove to town. I cannot sleep, so I make this entry. But I must try to get a few hours' sleep, as Van Helsing is to call for me at noon. He insists that I shall go with him on another expedition. It was 27 September. It was 2 o'clock before we found a suitable opportunity for our attempt. The funeral, held at noon, was all completed, and the last stragglers of the mourners had taken themselves lazily away. When, looking carefully from behind a clump of alder trees, we saw the sexton lock the gate after him. We knew then that we were safe till morning, did we desire it, but the professor told me that we should not want more than an hour at most. Again, I felt that horrid sense of the reality of things, in which any effort of imagination seemed out of place. And I realized distinctly the perils of the law which we were incurring in our unhallowed work. Besides, I felt it was all so useless. Outrageous as it was to open a leaden coffin to see if a woman dead nearly a week were really dead, it now seemed the height of folly to open the tomb again when we knew from the evidence of our own eyesight that the coffin is empty. I shrugged my shoulders, however, and rested silent, for Van Helsing had a way of going on his own road no matter who remonstrated. He took the key, opened the vault, and again courteously motioned me to proceed. The place was not so gruesome as last night, but oh, how unutterably mean-looking when the sunshine streamed in. Van Helsing walked over to Lucy's coffin, and I followed. He bent over, and again forced back the leaden flange. And then a shock of surprise and dismay shot through me. There lay Lucy, seemingly just as we had seen her the night before her funeral. She was, if possible, more radiantly beautiful than ever, and I could not believe that she was dead. The lips were red, nay, redder than before, and on the cheeks was a delicate bloom. "Is this a juggle?" I said to him. "Are you convinced now?" said the professor in response, and as he spoke, he put over his hand, and in a way that made me shudder, pulled back the dead lips and showed the white teeth. See, he went on, see, they are even sharper than before. With this and this, and he touched one of the canine teeth and that below it, the little children can be bitten. Are you of belief now, friend John? Once more argumentative hostility woke within me. I could not accept such an overwhelming idea as he suggested. So with an attempt to argue, of which I was even at the moment ashamed, I said, she may have been placed here since last night. Indeed, that is so. And by whom? I do not know. Someone has done it. And yet, she had been dead 1 week. Most peoples in that time would not look so. I had no answer for this, so was silent. Van Helsing did not seem to notice my silence. At any rate, he showed neither chagrin nor triumph. He was looking intently at the face of the dead woman, raising the eyelids and looking at the eyes, and once more opening the lips and examining the teeth. Then he turned to me and said, "Here, there is one thing which is different from all recorded. Here is some dual life that is not as the common. She was bitten by the vampire when she was in a trance, sleepwalking. Oh, you start. You do not know that, friend John, but you shall know it all later. And in trance, could he best come to take more blood. In trance she died, and in trance she is undead too. So it is that she differ from all other. Usually when the undead sleep, at home." And as he spoke, he made a comprehensive sweep of his arm to designate what to a vampire was home. "Their face show what they are, but this so sweet that was. When she not undead, she go back to the nothings of the common dead. There is no malign there, see, and so it make it hard that I must kill her in its sleep." This turned my blood cold, and it began to dawn upon me that I was accepting Van Helsing's theories. But if she really were dead, what was there of terror in the idea of killing her? He looked up at me and evidently saw the change in my face, for he said almost joyously, "Ah, you believe now?" I answered, "Do not press me too hard all at once. I am willing to accept. How will you do this bloody work?" "I shall cut off her head and fill her mouth with garlic, and I shall drive a stake through her body." It made me shudder to think of so mutilating the body of a woman whom I had loved. And yet, the feeling was not so strong as I had expected. I was, in fact, beginning to shudder at the presence of this being, this undead, as Van Helsing called it, and to loathe it. Is it possible that love is all subjective or all objective? I waited a considerable time for Van Helsing to begin. He stood as if wrapped in thought. Presently he closed the catch of his bag with a snap and said, "I have been thinking, and I have made up my mind as to what is best. If I did simply follow my inclining, I would do now at this moment what is to be done. There are other things to follow, and things that are 1,000 times more difficult in them. We do not know. This is simple. She have yet no life taken, so that is of time. And to act now would be to take danger from her forever. But then, we may have to want Arthur. And how shall we tell him of this? If you who saw the wounds on Lucy's throat, and saw the wounds so similar on the child's at the hospital, if you, who saw the coffin empty last night and full today, with a woman who have not changed, only to be more rose and more beautiful in a whole week after she died. If you know of this and know of the white figure last night that brought the child to the churchyard, and yet of your own senses you do not believe, how then can I expect Arthur, who know none of those things, to believe? He doubted me when I took him from her kiss when she was dying. I know he has forgiven me because in some mistaken idea I have done things that prevent him saying goodbye as he should. And he may think that in some more mistaken idea this woman was buried alive, and that in most mistake of all, we have killed her. He will then argue back that it is we mistaken ones that have killed her by our own ideas, and so he will be much unhappy always. Yet he never can be sure, and that is the first of all. And he will sometimes think that she that he loved was buried alive, and that will paint his dreams with horrors of what she must have suffered. And again, he will think that we may be right, and that his so beloved was, after all, an undead. No. I told him once, and since then I learned much. Now, since I know it is all true, 100,000 times more do I know that he must pass through the bitter waters to reach the sweet. He, poor fellow, must have 1 hour that will make the very face of heaven grope him. Then we can act for good all round and send him peace. My mind is made up. Let us go. You return home for tonight to your asylum and see that all be well. As for me, I shall spend the night here in this churchyard in my own way. Tomorrow night, you will come to me to the Berkeley Hotel at 10 o'clock. I shall send for Arthur to come too, and also that so fine young man of America that gave his blood. Later, we shall all have work to do. I come with you so far as Piccadilly and there dine, or I must be back here before the sun set. So we locked the tomb and came away and got over the wall of the churchyard, which was not much of a task, and drove back to Piccadilly. Note left by Van Helsing in his portmanteau. Berkeley Hotel, directed to John Seward, M.D. Not delivered. 27 September. Friend John, I write this in case anything should happen. I go alone to watch in that churchyard. It pleases me that the undead Miss Lucy shall not leave tonight, that so on the morrow night she may be more eager. Therefore I shall fix some things she like not, garlic and a crucifix, and so seal up the door of the tomb. She is young as undead and will heed. Moreover, these are only to prevent her coming out. They may not prevail on her wanting to get in, for then the undead is desperate. They must find the line of least resistance, whosoever it may be. I shall be at hand all the night, from sunset till after sunrise, and if there be aught that may be learned, I shall learn it, or Miss Lucy, or from her. I have no fear. But that other, to whom is there, that she is undead, he have now the power to seek her tomb and find shelter. He is cunning, as I know from Mr. Jonathan, and from the way that all along he have fooled us when he played us for Miss Lucy's life, and we lost. And in many ways the undead are strong. We have always the strength in his hand of 20 men. Even we 4, who give our strength to Miss Lucy, it also is all to him. Besides, he can summon his wolf, I know not what. So, if it be that he comes thither on this night, he shall find me, but none other shall until it be too late. But it may be that he will not attempt the place. There is no reason why he should. His hunting ground is more full of games than the churchyard where the undead women sleep in one old man lodge. Therefore, I write in this case. Take the papers that are with this, the diaries of Harker and the rest, and read them, and then find this great undead and cut off his head and burn his heart or drive a stake through it, so that the world may rest from him. If it be so, farewell, Van Helsing. Dr. Seward's Diary. 28th September. It is wonderful what a good night's sleep will do for one. Yesterday, I was almost willing to accept Van Helsing's monstrous ideas, but now they seem to start out lurid before me as outrages on common sense. I have no doubt that he believes it all. I wonder if his mind can have become in any way unhinged. Surely there must be some rational explanation for all these mysterious things. Is it possible the professor can have done it himself? He is so abnormally clever that if he went off his head, he would carry out his intent with regard to some fixed idea in a wonderful way. I am loath to think it, and indeed it would be almost as great a marvel as the other to find that Van Helsing was mad. But anyhow, I shall watch him carefully. I may get some light on the mystery. Last night, a little before 10 o'clock, Arthur and Quincy came into Van Helsing's room. He told us all that he wanted us to do, what he wanted us to do, but especially addressing himself to Arthur, as if all our wills were centered in his. He began by saying that he hoped we would all come with him for, as he said, there is grave duty to be done there. You were doubtless surprised at my letter. This query was directly addressed to Lord Godalming. It was. It rather upset me for a bit. There's been so much trouble around my house of late. I could do without any more. I have been curious, too, as to what you mean. Quincy and I talked it over. The more we talked, the more puzzled we got. Till now I can say for myself that I'm about up a tree as to any meaning about anything. Me too, said Quincy Morris laconically. Oh, said the professor. Then you are near the beginning, both of you, than friend John here, who has had to go a long way back before he can even get so far as to begin. It was evident that he recognized my return to my old doubting frame of mind without my saying a word. Then, turning to the other two, he said with intense gravity, I want your permission to do what I think good this night. It is, I know, much to ask. And when you know what it is I propose to do, you will know, and only then, how much. Therefore, may I ask that you promise me in the dark, so that afterwards, though you may be angry with me for a time, I must not disguise from myself the possibility that such may be. That you will not blame yourselves for anything. That's frank, anyhow, broke in Quincy. I'll answer for the professor. I don't quite see his drift. I swear he's honest. That's good enough for me. I thank you, sir, said Van Helsing proudly. I have done myself the honor of counting you one trusting friend, and such endorsement is dear to me. He held out a hand, which Quincy took. Then Arthur spoke out. Dr. Van Helsing, I don't quite like to buy a pig in a poke.
as they say in Scotland. But if it be anything in which my honour as a gentleman or my faith as a Christian is concerned, I cannot make such a promise. If you can assure me that what you intend does not violate either of these two, then I'll give my consent at once. For the life of me, I cannot understand what you are driving at.
I accept your limitation, said Van Helsing. And all I ask of you is that if you feel it necessary to condemn any act of mine, you will first consider it well and be satisfied that it does not violate your reservations.
Agreed, said Arthur. That is only fair. And now that the pool parlours are over, may I ask what it is we are to do?
I want you to come with me, to come in secret, to the churchyard at Kingstead.
Arthur's face fell as he said in an amazed sort of way, Where poor Lucy is buried? The professor bowed. Arthur went on, And when there?
To enter the tomb.
Arthur stood up. Professor, are you in earnest, or is this a monstrous joke? Pardon me, but I see that you are in earnest. He sat down again, but I could see that he sat firmly and proudly as one who was on his dignity. Silence until he asked again. And within the tomb,
to open the coffin.
This is too much, he said angrily, rising again. I am willing to be patient in all things that are reasonable, but in this desecration of the grave of one who... He fairly choked with indignation. The professor looked pityingly at him.
If I could spare you one pang, my poor friend, he said, God knows I would. But this night our feet must tread in thorny paths, or later, and forever. The feet you love must walk in paths of flame.
Arthur looked up with a set white face and said, Take care, sir, take care.
Would it not be well to hear what I have to say? Said Van Helsing. And then you will at least know the limit of my purpose. Shall I go on?
Well, that's fair enough, broke in Morris. After a pause, Van Helsing went on, evidently with an effort.
Miss Lucy is dead. Is it not so? Yes. Then there can be no wrong to her. But if she be not dead...
Arthur jumped to his feet. Good God! What do you mean? Has there been any mistake? Has she been buried alive? He groaned in anguish that not even hope could soften.
I did not say she was alive, my child. I did not think it. I go no further than to say she might be undead.
Undead? Not alive? What do you mean? Is this all a nightmare, or what is it?
There are mysteries which men can only guess at, which age by age they may solve only in part. Believe me, we are now on the verge of one. But I have not done. May I cut off the head of dead Miss Lucy?
Heavens and earth, no! Cried Arthur in a storm of passion. Not for the wide world will I consent to any mutilation of her dead body. Dr. Van Helsing, you try me too far. What have I done to you that you should torture me so? What did that poor sweet girl do that you should want to cast such dishonour on her grave? Are you mad that speak such things, or am I mad that listen to them? Don't dare to think any more of such a desecration. I shall not give my consent to anything you do. I have a duty to do in protecting her grave from outrage, and by God, I shall do it.
Van Helsing rose up from where he had all the time been seated, and said gravely and sternly, My Lord Godalming, I too have a duty to do, a duty to others, a duty to you, a duty to the dead, and by God, I shall do it. All I ask you now is that you come with me, that you look
and listen. And if, when later I make the same request to you, do not be more eager for its fulfillment even than I am, then I shall do my duty, whatever may seem to me. And then, to follow your lordship's wishes, I shall hold myself at your disposal to render an account to you, when and where you will. His voice broke a little, and he went on with a voice full of pity. But I beseech you, do not go forth in anger with me. In a long life of acts which were often not pleasant to do, and which sometimes did wring my heart, I have never had so heavy a task as now. Believe me that if the time comes for you to change your mind towards me, one look from you will wipe away all this so sad hour. For I would do what a man can to save you from sorrow. Just think, for why should I give myself so much of labor and so much of sorrow? I have come here from my own land to do what I can of good. At the first to please my friend Jean, and then to help a sweet young lady, whom too I came to love. For her, I am ashamed to say so much, but I say it in kindness. I gave what you gave. The blood of my veins, I gave it. I, who was not like you, her lover, but only her physician and her friend. I gave to her my nights and days before death, after death, and if my death can do her good even now, when she is the dead undead, she shall have it freely. He said this with a very grave, sweet pride, and Arthur was much affected by it. He took the old man's hand and said in a broken voice, "Oh, it is hard to think of it. I cannot understand. But at least I shall go with you and wait." Chapter 16. Dr. Seward's Diary continued. It was just 12:15 when we got into the churchyard over the low wall. The night was dark, with occasional gleams of moonlight between the rents of the heavy clouds that scudded across the sky. We all kept somehow close together, with Van Helsing slightly in front as he led the way. When we had come close to the tomb, I looked well at Arthur, for I feared that the proximity to a place laden with so sorrowful a memory would upset him. But he bore himself well. I took it that the very mystery of the proceeding was in some way a counteractant to his grief. The professor unlocked the door, seeing a natural hesitation among us for various reasons, solved the difficulty by entering first himself. The rest of us followed, and he closed the door. He then lit a dark lantern and pointed to the coffin. Arthur stepped forward, hesitatingly. Van Helsing said to me, "You were here with me yesterday. Was the body of Miss Lucy in that coffin?" "It was." The professor turned to the rest, saying, "You hear? And yet there is one who does not believe with me." He took his screwdriver and again took off the lid of the coffin. Arthur looked on, very pale but silent. When the lid was removed, he stepped forward. He evidently did not know there was a leaden coffin, or at any rate had not thought of it. When he saw the rent in the lead, the blood rushed to his face for an instant, but he quickly fell away again, so that he remained of a ghastly whiteness. He was still silent. Van Helsing forced back the leaden flange, and we all looked in and recoiled. The coffin was empty. For several minutes no one spoke. The silence was broken by Quincy Morris. "Professor, I answered for you. Your word is all I want. I wouldn't ask such a thing ordinarily. I wouldn't so dishonor you as to imply a doubt. But this is a mystery that goes beyond any honor or dishonor. Is this your doing?" "I swear to you by all I hold sacred, that I have not removed nor touched her. What happened was this. 2 nights ago my friend Seward and I came here, with good purpose, believe me. I opened that coffin, which was then sealed up, and we found it, as now, empty. Then we waited, and we saw something white come through the trees. The next day, we came here in daytime, and she lay there. Did she not find John? Yes. That night we were just in time. One more so small child was missing, and we find it, thank God, unharmed amongst graves. Yesterday I came here before sundown, for at sundown the undead can move. I waited here all the night till the sun rose, but I saw nothing. It was most probable that it was because I had laid over the clamps of those doors garlic, which the undead cannot bear, and other things which they shun. Last night there was no exodus, so tonight before the sundown I took away my garlic and other things. And so it is, we find this coffin empty. But bear with me. So far there is much that is strange. Wait you with me outside, unseen and unheard, and things much stranger are yet to be. So, here he shut the dark slide of his lantern. Now to the outside. He reopened the door and we filed out, he coming last, and locking the door behind him. Oh, it seemed fresh and pure in the night air after the terror of that vault. How sweet it was to see the clouds race by, and the passing gleams of the moonlight between the scudding clouds crossing and passing like the gladness and sorrow of a man's life. How sweet it was to breathe the fresh air that had no taint of death and decay. How humanizing to see the red lighting of the sky beyond the hill, and to hear far away the muffled roar that marks the life of a great city. Each in his own way was solemn and overcome. Arthur was silent and was, I could see, striving to grasp the purpose and the inner meaning of the mystery. I myself was tolerably patient, and half inclined again to throw aside doubt and to accept Van Helsing's conclusions. Quincy Morris was phlegmatic in the way of a man who accepts all things, and accepts them in the spirit of cool bravery, with hazard of all he has to stake. Not being able to smoke, he cut himself a good-sized plug of tobacco and began to chew. As to Van Helsing, he was employed in a definite way. First, he took from his bag a mass, what looked like thin, wafer-like biscuit, which was carefully rolled up in a white napkin. Next, he took out a handful of some whitish stuff like dough or putty. He crumbled the wafer up fine and worked it into the mass between his hands. Then he took and rolled it into thin strips, began to lay them into the crevices between the door and its setting in the tomb. I was somewhat puzzled by this, and being close, asked him what it was that he was doing. Arthur and Quincy drew near also, as they too were curious. He answered, I am closing the tomb, so that the undead may not enter. And is that stuff you have put there going to do it? Asked Quincy. Great Scott, is this a game? It is. What is that which you are using? This time the question was asked by Arthur. Van Helsing reverently lifted his hat as he answered. The host. I brought it from Amsterdam. I have an indulgence. It was an answer that appalled the most skeptical of us, and we felt individually that in the presence of such earnest purpose as the professor's, a purpose which could thus use the, to him, most sacred of things, it was impossible to distrust. In respectful silence we took the places assigned to us close round the tomb, but hidden from the sight of anyone approaching. I pitied the others, especially Arthur. I myself had been apprenticed by my former visits to this watching horror, and yet I, who had up to an hour ago repudiated the proofs, felt my heart sink within me. Never did tombs look so ghastly white. Never did cypress or yew or juniper so seem the embodiment of funeral gloom. Never did tree or grass wave or rustle so ominously. Never did bough creak so mysteriously. And never did the faraway howling of dogs send such a woeful presage through the night. There was a king's spell of silence, a big, aching void. And then, from the professor, a keen tss. He pointed. And far down the avenue of yews, we saw a white figure advance. A dim, white figure, which held something dark at its breast. The figure stopped. At the moment, a ray of moonlight fell between the masses of driving clouds and showed in startling prominence a dark-haired woman dressed in the cerements of the grave. We could not see the face, for it was bent down over what we saw to be a fair-haired child. There was a pause, a sharp little cry, such as a child gives in sleep, or a dog as it lies before the fire and dreams. We were starting forward, but the professor's warning hand, seen by us as he stood behind a yew tree, kept us back. And then, as we looked, the white figure moved forwards again. It was now near enough for us to see clearly, and the moonlight still held. My own heart grew cold as ice, and I could hear the gasp of Arthur as we recognized the features of Lucy Westenra. Lucy Westenra, but yet how changed. Sweetness was turned to adamantine, heartless cruelty, and the purity to voluptuous wantonness. Van Helsing stepped out, and obedient to his gesture, we all advanced too, the four of us ranged in a line before the door of the tomb. Van Helsing raised his lantern and drew the slide. By the concentrated light that fell on Lucy's face, we could see that the lips were crimson with fresh blood, and that the stream had trickled over her chin and stained the purity of her lawn death-robe. We shuddered with horror. I could see by the tremulous light that even Van Helsing's iron nerve had failed. Arthur was next to me, and if I had not seized his arm and held him up, he would have fallen. When Lucy, I called the thing that was before us Lucy because it bore her shape, she saw us, she drew back with an angry snarl, such as a cat gives when taken unawares. Then her eyes ranged over us. Lucy's eyes in form and color, but Lucy's eyes unclean and full of hellfire, instead of the pure, gentle orbs we knew. At the moment, the remnant of my love passed into hate and loathing. Had she then to be killed, I could have done it with savage delight. As she looked, her eyes blazed with unholy light, and the face became wreathed with a voluptuous smile. Oh God, how it made me shudder to see it. With a careless motion, she flung to the ground, callous as a devil, the child that up to now she had clutched strenuously to her breast, growling over it as a dog growls over a bone. The child gave a sharp cry and lay there moaning. There was a cold-bloodedness in the act which wrung a groan from Arthur. When she advanced to him with outstretched arms and a wanton smile, he fell back and hid his face in his hands. Still she advanced, however, with a languorous, voluptuous grace said, "Come to me, Arthur. Leave those others and come to me. My arms are hungry for you. Come, and we can rest together. Come, my husband. Come." There was something diabolically sweet in her tones, something of the tingling of glass when struck, which rang through the brains even of us who heard the words addressed to another. As for Arthur, he seemed under a spell, moving his hands from his face. He opened wide his arms. She was leaping for them when Van Helsing sprang forward and held between them his little golden crucifix. She recoiled from it, and with a suddenly distorted face full of rage, dashed past him as if to enter the tomb. When within a foot or two of the door, however, she stopped as if arrested by some irresistible force. She turned, and her face was shown in the clear burst of moonlight and by the lamp, which had now no quiver from Van Helsing's iron nerves. Never did I see such baffled malice on a face, and never, I trust, shall such ever be seen again by mortal eyes. Beautiful color became livid, the eyes seemed to throw out sparks of hellfire, the brows were wrinkled as though the folds of the flesh were the coils of Medusa's snakes, and this lovely blood-stained mouth grew to an open square, as in the passion masks of the Greeks and Japanese. If ever a face meant death, if looks could kill, we saw it at that moment. So, for a full half a minute, which seemed an eternity, she remained between the lifted crucifix and the sacred closing of her means of entry. Van Helsing broke the silence by asking Arthur, "Answer me, oh my friend, am I to proceed with my work?" Arthur threw himself on his knees and hid his face in his hands, and he answered, "Do as you will, friend, do as you will. There can be no horror like this ever any more." He groaned in spirit. Quincy and I simultaneously moved towards him and took his arms. We could hear the click of the closing lantern as Van Helsing held it down, coming close to the tomb. He began to remove from the chinks some of the sacred album which he had placed there. We all looked on in horrified amazement as we saw, when he stood back, the woman, with a corporeal body as real as the moment as our own, pass in through the interstice where scarce a knife blade could have gone. We felt a glad sense of release when we saw the professor calmly restoring the strings of putty to the edges of the door. When this was done, he lifted the child and said, "Come now, friends. We can do no more till tomorrow. There is a funeral at noon, so here we shall all come before long after that. The friends of the dead will all be gone by 2, and when the sexton lock the gate, we shall remain. There is more to do, but not like this of tonight. As for this little one, he is not much harm, and by tomorrow night he shall be well. We shall leave him where the police will find him, as until the night, and then to home." Coming close to Arthur, he said, "My friend Arthur, you have had sore trial, but after, when you will look back, you will see how it was necessary. You are now in the bitter waters, my child. By this time tomorrow you will, please God, have passed them, and have drunk of the sweet waters. So do not mourn overmuch. Till then, I shall not ask you to forgive me." Arthur and Quincy came home with me, and we tried to cheer each other on the way. We had left the child in safety and were tired, so we all slept with more or less reality of sleep. 29 September, night. A little before 12 o'clock, we three, Arthur, Quincy, Morris, and myself, called for the professor. It was odd to notice that by common consent we had all put on black clothes. Of course, Arthur wore black, for he was in deep mourning. The rest of us wore it by instinct. We got to the churchyard by 1:30 and strolled about, keeping out of official observation. So when the gravediggers had completed their task and the sexton, under the belief that everyone had gone, had locked the gate, we had the place all to ourselves. Van Helsing, instead of his little black bag, had with him a long leather one, something like a cricketing bag. It was manifestly of fair weight. When we were alone and had heard the last of the footsteps die out up the road, we silently, as if by ordered intention, followed the professor to the tomb. He unlocked the door and we entered, closing it behind us. Then he took from his bag the lantern, which he lit, and also 2 wax candles, which, when lighted, he struck, by melting their own ends, on other coffins, so that they might give light sufficient to work by. When he again lifted the lid off Lucy's coffin, we all looked, Arthur trembling like an aspen, and saw that the body lay there in all its death beauty. But there was no love in my own heart, nothing but loathing for the foul thing which had taken Lucy's shape without her soul. I could see even Arthur's face grow hard as he looked. Presently, he said to Van Helsing, "Is this really Lucy's body, or only a demon in her shape?" "It is her body, and yet not it. But wait a while, and you shall see her as she was, and is." She seemed like a nightmare of Lucy as she lay there, the pointed teeth, the blood-stained, voluptuous mouth, which it made one shudder to see. The whole carnal and unspiritual appearance seeming like a devilish mockery of Lucy's sweet purity. Van Helsing, with his usual methodicalness, began taking the various contents from his bag and placing them ready for use. First, he took out a soldering iron and some plumbing solder, and then a small oil lamp, which gave out, when lit in a corner of the tomb, gas, which burned at fierce heat with a blue flame. Then his operating knives, which he placed to hand. And last, a round wooden stake some 2.5 to 3 inches thick and about 3 feet long. One end of it was hardened by charring in the fire and was sharpened to a fine point. With this stake came a heavy hammer, such as in households is used in the coal cellar for breaking up the lumps. To me, the doctor's preparation for work of any kind are stimulating and bracing. The effect of these things on both Arthur and Quincy was to cause them sort of consternation. They both, however, kept their courage and remained silent and quiet. When all was ready, Van Helsing said,
"Before we do anything, let me tell you this. It is out of the lore and experience of the ancients and of all those who have studied the powers of the undead. When they become such, there comes with the change the curse of immortality. They cannot die, but must go on age after age, adding new victims and multiplying the evils of the world. For all that die from the preying of the undead becomes themselves undead and prey on their kind. And so the circle goes on ever widening, like as the ripples from a stone thrown in the water. Friend Arthur, if you had met that kiss which you know of before poor Lucy died, or again last night when you opened your arms to her, you would in time, when you had died, become Nosferatu, as they call it in Eastern Europe, and would all time make more of those undeads that have so filled us with horror. The career of this so unhappy dear lady is but just begun. Those children whose blood she sucked are not as yet so much as hers, but if she live on undead, more and more they lose their blood, and by her power over them they come to her. And so she draw their blood with that so wicked mouth. But if she die in truth, then all cease. The tiny wounds of the throats disappear, and they go back to their place, unknowing ever of what has been. But of the most blessed of all, when this now undead be made to rest, as true dead, then the soul of the poor lady whom we love shall again be free. Instead of working wickedness by night and growing more debased in the assimilation of it by day, she shall take her place with the other angels. So that, my friend, it will be a blessed hand for her that shall strike the blow that sets it free. To this I am willing. But is there none amongst us who has a better right? Will it be no joy to think of hereafter in the silence of the night when sleep is not? It was my hand that sent her to the stars. It was the hand of him that loved her best. The hand of all she would have herself chosen. Had it been to her to choose. Tell me, if there be such a one among us. We all looked at Arthur. He saw too what we all did. The infinite kindness was suggested that his should be the hand which would restore Lucy to us as a holy and not an unholy memory. He stepped forward and said bravely, though his hand trembled. His face was as pale as snow, "My true friend, from the bottom of my broken heart, I thank you. Tell me what I am to do, and I shall not falter." Van Helsing laid a hand on his shoulder and said, "Brave lad, a moment's courage, and it is done.
This stake must be driven through her. It will be a fearful ordeal. Be not deceived in that. But it will be only a short time, and you will then rejoice more than your pain was great. From this grim tomb you will emerge as though you tread on air. But you must not falter once you have begun. Only think that we, your true friends, are around you, and that we pray for you all the time.
Go on,
said Arthur hoarsely.
tell me what I am to do.
Take the stake in your left hand, ready to place the point over the heart, and the hammer in your right. Then, when we begin our prayer for the dead, I shall read him. I have here the book, and the others shall follow. Strike in God's name, that so all may be well with the dead that we love, that the undead pass away. Arthur took the stake and the hammer, and when once his mind was set on action, his hands never trembled nor even quivered. Van Helsing opened his missal and began to read, and Quincy and I followed as well as we could. Arthur placed the point of the heart over the heart, and as I looked, I could see its dint in the white flesh. Then he struck with all his might. The thing in the coffin writhed, and a hideous, blood-curdling screech came from the open lips. The body shook and quivered and twisted in wild contortions. The white, sharp teeth clamped together till the lips were cut, and the mouth was smeared with a crimson foam. But Arthur never faltered. He looked like a figure of Thor, as his untrembling arm rose and fell, driving deeper and deeper the mercy-bearing stake, whilst the blood from the pierced heart welled and spurted up around it. His face was set, and high duty seemed to shine through it. The sight of it gave us courage, so that our voices seemed to ring through the little vault. And then the writhing and quivering of the body became less, and the teeth ceased to champ, and the face to quiver. Finally, it lay still. The terrible task was over. The hammer fell from Arthur's hand. He reeled and would have fallen had we not caught him. The great drops of sweat sprang out on his forehead, and his breath came in broken gasps. It had indeed been an awful strain on him, and had he not been forced to his task by more than human considerations, he would never have gone through with it. For a few minutes we were so taken up with him, we did not look towards the coffin. When we did, however, a murmur of startled surprise ran from one to the other of us. We gazed so eagerly that Arthur rose, for he had been seated on the ground, and came and looked too. And then a glad, strange light broke over his face and dispelled altogether the gloom of horror that lay upon it. There, in the coffin, lay no longer the foul thing we had so dreaded and grown to hate that the work of her destruction was yielded as a privilege to the one best entitled to it. But Lucy, as we had seen her in her life, with her face of unequaled sweetness and purity. True, that there were there, as we had seen them in life, the traces of care and pain and waste. But these were all dear to us, for they marked her truth to what we knew. One and all, we felt that the holy calm that lay like sunshine over the wasted face and form was only an earthly token and symbol of the calm that was to reign forever. Van Helsing came and laid his hand on Arthur's shoulder and said to him, "And now, Arthur, my friend, dear lad, am I not forgiven?" The reaction of the terrible strain came as he took the old man's hand in his, and raising it to his lips, pressed it, and said, "Forgiven? God bless you, you have given my dear one her soul again, and me peace." He put his hands on the professor's shoulder, and laying his head on his breast, cried for a while silently while we stood unmoving. When he raised his head, Van Helsing said to him, "And now, my child, you may kiss her. Kiss her dead lips if you will, as she would have you to, if for her to choose. For she is not a grinning devil now, not any more a foul thing for all eternity. No longer she is the devil's undead. She is God's true dead, whose soul is with him." Arthur bent and kissed her, and then we sent him and Quincy out of the tomb. The professor and I sawed off the top of the stake, leaving the point of it in the body. Then we cut off the head, filled the mouth with garlic. We sodded up the leaden coffin, screwed on the coffin lid, and gathered up our belongings. Came away. When the professor locked the door, he gave the key to Arthur. Outside, the air was sweet, the sun shone, and the birds sang. It seemed as if all nature were tuned to a different pitch. There was gladness and mirth and peace everywhere, for we were at rest ourselves on one account, and we were glad, though it was with a tempered joy. Before we moved away, Van Helsing said, "Now, my friends, one step of our work is done, one the most harrowing to ourselves. There remains a greater task, to find out the author of all this our sorrow, and to stamp him out. I have clues which we can follow, but it is a long task, and it's a difficult one, and there is danger in it, and pain. Shall you not all help me? We have learned to believe, all of us, is it not so? And since so, do we not see our duty? Yes. And do we not promise to go on to the bitter end?" Each in turn we took his hand, and the promise was made. And then, said the professor as we moved off, "2 nights hence, you shall meet with me and dine together at 7 o'clock with friend John. I shall entreat 2 others, 2 that you know not as yet, and I shall be ready to all our work and our plans unfold. Friend John, you come with me home, for I have much to consult about, and you can help me. Tonight I leave for Amsterdam, but shall return tomorrow night, and then begins our great quest. First, I shall have much to say, so that you may know what is to do and to dread. Then our promise shall be made to each other anew, for there is a terrible task before us, and once our feet are on the plowshare, we must not draw back."
And that, my friends, are chapters 15 and 16 of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Hope you enjoyed that. I hope I'm doing it justice. Let me go back through the chat here real quick. Let's see. Turn screw. Yeah, turn screw for screwdriver. And he does use them interchangeably in the text. She is young as undead and will heed. Yes. You are welcome. You are welcome. I enjoy the read. It's fun. The dead, undead. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the thing about the tropes is, you're seeing them here. So you're seeing the garlic, you're seeing the crucifix, the use of the host. But here you are brought into it piece by piece, so that even if you know the tropes, when they come, they're not like, "Oh God, yeah, we're doing this." It's like, "Oh no, this made sense here. Why did he have the host to seal the tomb?" Just a great image. Yes, he had a dispensation, an indulgence to get the wafers. Interesting use of the Latin missal, yeah, as once used for exorcism. Yep.
The ordeal of staking for the one doing it is also interesting. Yeah, and not only that, but the fact that he has to be torn, that this is the undead version of his loved one, and he is driving a stake through her heart, and the entire time he has to be torn with the idea that he loves her and he hates her. He loves who she was, hates what it is, and he's driving the stake through her to free her. What an awesome image. It seemed as if all nature were tuned to a different pitch. Yeah, that's a great one. It's like they come out and all of a sudden it's like, oh, something is right with the world now. Victorians are very sentimental about the bodies of deceased. Oh yeah, no, you did not deface them. You did not do these things. And so you're really kind of flipping the script on it, saying the only way we can bring this person to peace is to deface their body, is to mutilate it. I mean, driving a stake through, cutting off the head, and then sealing it back up in the lead coffin. It evokes a lot of imagery. So I hope you guys have had fun. If you want to see the previous chapters, they are all on my YouTube channel. It's yt.kahunatheelder.com. That'll take you straight to my YouTube channel because I don't have enough followers yet to have my own URL. Someday. But all the chapters are there. This one will be up on there in the next couple of days. I do need to edit out about 30 minutes of pre-show stuff. So I'll be doing that. But, if you like them on YouTube, give them a like, hit the subscribe button so you get the notifications when I put new ones up. And tell a friend. If you know someone who might enjoy hearing the reading, tell a friend to join us. It's every Thursday at the same time. Usually takes me about an hour and 15 minutes to get through 2 chapters. It's amazing how consistent Bram Stoker was in the length of his chapters, in that every week it has been right about an hour and 15 minutes to get through 2 chapters. Amazing how it's split out. Yeah, it's really good. So, tell a friend. And like I said, subscribe and like on my YouTube channel if you feel like it. Thursday at what time? Okay, so 4:00 Pacific time. Paid by the word and given a word limit, probably. So it's 4:00 Pacific time. I'm not sure what time that is in Australia. So let's see. That would have to be. That has to. You guys are plus GMT, right? Yeah, it's 4:00 Pacific on Thursday my time. So yeah, please. I will mention it in the Vampire the Masquerade community. Oh, cool! Thank you. 9:50 a.m. Friday now. 9:50 or 9:15. 9:50. Okay, so right off the bat, that's 7, 16 and a half hours ahead. Okay, 16 and a half hours. So what's that? 7.5 hours behind here, but the following day. So 4:00. Wow, that's early for you guys. No, it's not that early. Yeah, so if it's 9:50 now, then it would be starting at 8:30 your time, 8:30 a.m. on Friday. Thank you so much. I enjoy doing it. There are some of the scenes in here where I have to do or some of the chapters where I have to do 6 and 7 voices and it's flipping between all of them, and that's a bit of a challenge, but I enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun. All right, gang, I'm going to let you go. Tell a friend. Come back next week, and I will be back tomorrow morning for Kahuna Matata. So tomorrow's Fun Friday, so we will have live video chat available on stream. So hopefully I will see you guys tomorrow morning. If not, happy hours tomorrow night. And I will see you guys a little later. It's cool stuff. You're right, Daz, it is. I will see you guys later. Thank you again. Oh, we should probably raid somebody. Who should we raid? Who's up? Who is up that we can raid? I gotta look. Who is up? Let's see. Eli is up. So we'll send you over to Eli. All right, you guys. Have an awesome day, an awesome evening. See you guys tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. If not, have a great weekend. Now that I've hit the raid, I can just wait for it to clear out. Have a great day, you guys. And thank you for being here. You guys are what I do this for. And here we go. Bye-bye.